Good morning, everybody. Let's jump straight into it. Today, I'd like to speak to you guys about the power of the decentralized web, why I think it is important, and some challenges that we are facing. To talk about that, we first need to take a look at the current process. So currently, if you want to access a website, you need to go through multiple middlemen. We can look at these as gatekeepers. So for instance, if you're trying to reach a website, you'll be redirected to the domain name server, which will then point you to a server hosting company, and then usually they'll point you to a third party, and only then will you be directed to your website. These gatekeepers obviously come with vulnerabilities in the form of internet attacks, and they also make censorship and surveillance much easier. Centralized services like DNS providers and hosting companies are prime targets for DOS attacks, like the 2016 DIN attack, which took down major websites like Twitter at the time and Netflix. Government and corporate control. So ISPs, hosting companies, and registrars can block or remove websites due to political or legal pressure. This is not a good thing. And under surveillance, I just like to highlight mass data collection, where our data is stored in centralized data stores, and these information is often sold and distributed. The situation is only getting worse as we're moving to the cloud, where data is hosted by giant corporations. This move creates much, much bigger middlemen. Now, moving to the cloud makes sense as it's cheaper for the developer and service operators. They don't have to worry about maintaining physical servers. So we can't blame them, but I found this trend to be quite dangerous because these giant corporations have unlimited control over the hosting services, and this power is very easy to abuse. Just to give you guys an idea of how strong these middlemen can be, this is some data about the revenue generated last year for the biggest companies that are in the centralized market. This is no small number. If you take a look even at the smallest one, which is Meta, they almost generated 118 billion US dollars in revenue. So it's quite safe to say that these middlemen have a very firm grip on the centralized web. For example, a CEO of a major company who acts as a gatekeeper for over 9 million websites decided that after some public pressure that one of the websites it manages, a far-right page, should be blocked. He then sent this email to his co-workers. This was an arbitrary decision. I woke up this morning in a bad mood and decided to kick them off the internet. He then even continues to say that no one should have this power. As a response, one of his employees asked him, "Is this the day the internet dies?" Now, I don't actually think we are killing the internet, but I do believe, however, that we're in the middle of a kind of irresponsible centralization process, which leaves our internet much more fragile. The decentralized people-to-people web solves this problem by removing the central points, the web hosting services. It empowers users to have host sites they want to preserve. On this network, the sites get downloaded directly from other visitors. So this means if you have a site with 100 visitors, it means it's hosted by 100 different computers around the world. Basically, this is a people-powered version of the internet. The security of this network is provided by public key cryptography. This makes sure that no one can modify the websites, except of course for the real owner. Think of it like, instead of getting power from a major power plant, you put up solar panels on top of your house. And if your neighbor down the street needs some extra energy, they can just download some from your house. So by using the decentralized web, we can help keep content accessible for other visitors. And doing this, we can also fight against things that we feel are unjust, like censorship. In China, for example, the internet is very tightly controlled. They can't criticize the government, organize a protest, and it's also forbidden to post a certain kind of emoticon in remembrance of the victims of the Tiananmen Square massacre. With the decentralized web, it's not the government that decides what gets seen and what doesn't, but it's the people, which makes the web more democratic and at the same time makes it harder to do something that is clearly illegal everywhere in the world, as other users will probably not want to endanger themselves by hosting these kinds of problematic content. An example of decentralization in action will be Uniswap, a decentralized exchange where users trade cryptocurrencies directly. No middlemen, no banks, and no corporations in control. Why does it matter? In trading volume, without Uniswap deals with billions in trading volume without central authority. It stands in sharp contrast to the centralized exchanges like Binance or Coinbase, which can freeze your accounts. Uniswap is proof that decentralization can work at scale, showing a future beyond corporate-controlled platforms. But if the decentralized web is so powerful, why isn't everyone raving about it at the Sunday lunch? Why isn't it taking off? There are a few obstacles. I'd like to highlight usability challenges, complexity for the users. The decentralized apps often require knowledge of wallets, tokens, and protocols, making them less intuitive than traditional websites. It's also quite difficult to onboard. Setting up a Web3 identity, managing private keys, and interacting with a decentralized network can be quite daunting for non-technical users. There are also some performance and scalability issues where these blockchain-based systems process transactions sequentially. So compared to traditional centralized databases, they can be quite slow. Last but not least, there is resistance from big tech. Obviously, they have little to no incentive to shift or even support decentralization, as this doesn't make sense for their profit margins. So how can we make decentralization mainstream? First and foremost, a better user experience will help. Make decentralized apps as easy to use as traditional ones. We can use hybrid approaches where we combine decentralized features with some usability features of the traditional web. We also need to make it more accessible to onboard users and make the data more accessible. As for policy and regulation, advocating for frameworks that support decentralization. So what if we don't decentralize? It might be a bit dystopian, but imagine waking up one day, finding your online identity totally locked because some corporation somewhere decided that you violated some new vague policy. I'd much rather prefer a future where we as the users control our data, privacy, and online identities. I encourage each and everyone to explore, support, or even contribute to the decentralization. The decentralized web won't grow on its own. It needs users, builders, and advocates like you. After all, the internet was meant to connect us, not to control us. The decentralized web is our chance to take back that vision. Thank you.
Okay.